Hi, it's Diane Brennan, and welcome to Aging Dynamically. And thank you for being here. So today, I want to talk about my journey from SAD, which is the standard American diet, to the Lion diet. And you almost couldn't get too much more extreme unless you went from vegan to Lion. But it's been a very, very long journey, really, because it started over 20 years ago. Matter of fact, it started about 23 years ago when going on 24 now, wow, um, when I had to have my gallbladder removed. And it turned out that my gallbladder was so covered in scar tissue. Your gallbladder is like a valve that opens and closes. It's like a little pouch, and it does this to release bile and control the bile flow through your intestinal tract after your liver releases it. And mine was so filled with scar tissue that it just couldn't open anymore at all. And that was causing me, I was in so much pain. My body was spasming, and like I was coming up off of the those beds in the hospital bed, arching away, trying to, like my body was trying to get away from itself. I was in so much pain. It's changed my 1 to 10 scale for pain for sure. And so shortly after they took my gallbladder, I lost dairy out of my diet. Almost immediately, I lost any sense of iceberg lettuce. And back then, that's like almost all salads were made with was that, unless you ordered a spinach salad. They didn't have the mixed lettuces they came out with later. So it was a real struggle to have any kind of like side salad at a restaurant or anything because I couldn't have the lettuce. It would just race right through me. I don't know why that did that without the gallbladder, but it did. But then dairy. And I actually went through a period of suicidal depression when I lost dairy, because that was my most prominent food group. Like every meal I ate had some form of dairy on it or in it. And a hamburger without cheese was just dog food to me. A sandwich without cheese or ranch dressing, that was all dog food as far as I was concerned. And food was tasting like cardboard because the dairy was what gave it taste for me. So to lose my biggest food group out of my diet, that was hard. And over the years, I've developed more and more and more food intolerances. It's interesting. Now, I also ended up developing chronic myofascial pain syndrome. And when you have that, it's a positive then for fibromyalgia, because you can have fibromyalgia without the chronic myofascial pain syndrome. You cannot have the chronic myofascial pain syndrome without fibromyalgia. And I had I think I had all 13 fibromarkers. So life sometimes has funny happenstances or serendipities. And I was in a bookstore one day and I was looking through books, and there was a book there that was called Against the Grain. It was by a nutritionist, and I just randomly opened a page, and it was talking about the symptoms of silent celiac. And I read through those and I was like, oh my goodness, first off, that's my mother in a nutshell. But then, hello, that's me in a nutshell. So I bought the book and I read it. And from there, I started my journey to the Paleo diet. And I got slowly rid of all grains. And this is an approach I recommend to my clients when I'm doing the transformation life coaching and we're focusing on diet is to, don't dive off the deep end from eating a standard American diet into a pure carnivore or lion diet, because you're going to suffer. Do it slowly. You don't have to throw out everything in your refrigerator, cabinet, pantry, whatever. You don't have to throw it all out. But what I did, and I really recommend this approach, is as I finished something, I didn't replace it. So like all of my granola cereals, when I emptied a box, that was it. Bread, when I emptied the thing, that was it. I just didn't replace that item, or I replaced it with a substitute. So the first thing I did was go gluten-free, and then eventually I worked myself grain-free after reading that book, because there are 7 proteins besides gluten that create a lot of sensitivities and issues in our digestive system. There's a total of 7, and many of them are in the gluten-free grains. So I eventually got myself totally grain-free, got off all of that stuff. I started eating pastas that were made out of beans instead, or things, because I was lucky that at this time is when that market really started to explode, because the whole celiac thing was completely exploding. And I'm going to do a video at some point about why that timing, and it's very much tied to agricultural practices here in the United States, the breadbasket of the world, right? But anyway, changes that were made then, or shortly before then. So I did that for a very long time, and I also started to quit smoking, because I was going to school to be a doctor of naturopathy. So this was like 2008. This is after I lost my 4th husband to cancer. And I started walking. It was what they now call habit stacking, where with a desire to get healthier, it wasn't just about eating healthier. We are a mind, body, spirit, right? It's all tied together. So it was getting out in nature and walking. It was quitting smoking. It was changing the way I was eating. It was going deeper into my spiritual beliefs and practices. And so I tied all of that together. And I lost several sizes. And when I did finally weigh myself, I had lost like 70 pounds. Now, I went through a period, this is why I called it my journey, because that loss of dairy, I found out that I could tolerate dairy. My digestive system could process dairy as long as it was hot. So I went on a binge, and I went to things like Aldi's had this amazing pizza that I really loved. It was a Philly cheesesteak pizza. Fell in love with it. I was going back to eating cheese and all of that, but I was getting short of breath. Like I couldn't walk down the hallway of my house without getting short of breath. I reached a point I could no longer carry the laundry up the stairs. By then I was married to my last husband, and I had to have him carry the laundry up the stairs, or one of the kids if they were home. I couldn't go walking with him anymore. And I gained back 100 pounds. But I also figured it out one day. I was driving down the road, and I was like, wow, I really, really need to have an inhaler. And that clicked for me in my brain. And I realized the last time I had needed an inhaler was before dairy went out of my diet. And I did some more research, constantly doing that. And I found out about A1 casein, which didn't used to be in cows until we domesticated them. versus A2. A1 hits you in the respiratory system. Now, I can't tolerate any dairy proteins, so A2 milk doesn't help me either. I can't have whey. I can't have whey isolate, all that's no, just no dairy proteins. So I got dairy back out of my life, and and sadly that time took butter out. I was able to tolerate butter until then. Now I can't even have butter. If I do, I can't breathe. It's okay. I'm good with it now. I was good with it by then, but boy, I got excited for a moment there. Still couldn't have ranch dressing, still couldn't have milk, but I could have things with cheese in them as long as they were hot, I thought. Anyway, so back to paleo, back to walking and things. The weight wasn't moving. And I was like, all right, something is wrong. And then my now ex, my fifth husband, he was diagnosed because we moved from southwestern Pennsylvania, just outside of the Pittsburgh area, to my home state of New Hampshire. And we were going to do all of this stuff when we got there and go hiking and kayaking and everything. And then we discovered the bugs, because the area we moved into was a swamp forest. So we didn't go doing all of that as much as we thought we would. But anyway, we didn't. But part of that's also because he ended up getting diagnosed with a severe cardiomyopathy. And we started doing research, both of us. And because that's one of the things we had in common. So we had gone to keto, and we kept slowly transforming that. We just kept eliminating foods. And it's funny because some of it was because we were losing our taste for it. Like when we went carnivore, we ended up losing our taste for poultry. And so we had chickens, we were still eating eggs because we were homesteading there. We got pigs and raised them ourselves, so we knew what they'd eaten. We knew that they weren't injected with anything stupid. We knew they weren't eating corn or soy. I was very careful in the feed that I got them. And we learned about finishing them with squash. And we had very, very healthy pigs. But when we finished the last of that pork, we didn't go buying any more pork at the store. We did buy some bacon occasionally. We kept that in, but we weren't buying like pork chops or anything like that once we finished our last pork. We lost our taste for it. And the stuff in the store didn't taste anywhere near as good as the pork from our pigs. So, we didn't do pigs again after that. They're a lot of work. But he discovered the carnivore diet because of the cardiomyopathy. And it's a very specific type. They say it's genetic. They put him, when he ended up in the hospital for that and got diagnosed, they put him on a boatload of medications, and he wanted off of them. And as he started getting off of them, because we went to the carnivore diet, and then basically we transitioned into what Michaela Peterson coined the lion diet, which was just beef and water, pretty much. He still did butter and occasional bacon. I had kind of gone, well, I still did a little bit of bacon. So it was mainly lion, a very strict version of carnivore. And he started with that and some supplements and getting off of his medications. And part of it was a thickening of his heart wall. And when he got his follow-up not electrocardiogram, echocardiogram, the tech said, wow, your medications must really be working because your heart wall is thinning and your heart is healing. And she said, I've never seen the medications do this before. He said, it's because I'm not taking your medications anymore. I'm doing it with diet and supplements. So his cardiologist fired him. So did our family doctor. He fired both of us, which is okay because we were firing him at the same time anyway. It didn't matter. I kind of got off track during the course of our divorce, partly because I lost my dad back in 2023 at the age of 90 because of a heart condition. And I had been really solid on Lion pretty much at that, where all I was eating was hamburger and steak. I was so good. But that stress when he died, and I was dealing with everything with mom, and my marriage was also really starting to get into more trouble than it had been before. He and I both, actually, at that time, we were both really stressed, and we ended up opening the cage for the sugar monster to come out. So it was carnivore plus sugar, which is like the worst possible version of carnivore you can do. Okay. And it's taken me a couple of years to rein that back in. But I am finally, again, I am solid. I was still drinking some coffee. That was the other thing. Coffee, that kind of took us to carnivore rather than lion. Coffee is not part of the lion nor diet, nor is herbal tea or any kind of tea. So I got coffee out of my diet with a divorce and went back to just drinking tea like I used to before we got together. And now I have very recently eliminated tea because of my continued research and finding out about our digestive system and how we can't process the polyphenols and the tannins and things that are in tea. And so now I just drink water. And I'm back to eating just the ground beef and the steak. And I will tell you, and salt. It's beef, salt, fat. I do a lot of tallow. It's what I cook in. It's actually what I snack on. A lot of people in the carnivore thing, they talk about butter all the time. Again, I can't have it. So I use tallow. And the food noise is gone. I mean, I'm living with my mom as I take care of her, and she is a sugar and carb holic. There are so much processed food in this house and so much candy and chips and all of that stuff, crackers. She's got all of that stuff here. And I'm no longer craving it. I mean, we just brought home brownies that my son and grandson made together from Easter dinner, and normally I'd have been at least sneaking a bite to taste them, and I don't even want it. I've finally found that peace, but it's been a journey, and that's what I want to convey here, that it doesn't have to be a deep dive and try to make it happen overnight. It can be a gradual process, and my journey's had its ups and downs, and it's been a 20-some year process. It doesn't have to be that either for you. It's just how it was for me. We're all different. I've had my struggles. I'm human. We all are. But I am finally feeling so much better where I'm at. And if you have any autoimmune conditions, heart disease, diabetes, insulin resistance, pre-diabetic, I really suggest working towards going carnivore and possibly even fully strict lion diet. And I'll explain why the lion diet, and as a Leo, by the way, I love that name for it, in another video. That's a topic for another day. So I hope you've enjoyed this and just hearing what my journey has been like. Maybe you've had your own struggles and you can relate. Or you're just looking to get started and you're wondering, do I have to go to that extreme? You don't have to start there. Work your way and find what works for you. It took me this long to find what worked for me. Much love, many, many blessings. Peace out.